Good evening, everyone. We'll call the meeting to order. Joy, would you please call the roll?
Hamilton?
Yes.
Rasmussen?
Yes.
Revelinsky?
Yes.
Boyer?
Yes.
Ledger Kalin?
Yes.
Hallie?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Council, are there any additions to this evening's agenda?
Yes, I would like to add to those wishing to appear before the council, the Kiwanis Club of Fairfield.
Kiwanis, the only one. Okay. And you'll be making that, Darren?
Yes, I
Okay,
will.
great. Okay, then we'll move on to our consent agenda. We have approval of minutes from the June 24th meeting. We also have approval of minutes from the special meeting on June 27th. Approval of liquor licenses for the Burning Oak, the Elk Lodge, Best Western, and Fairfield RAGBRAI. And Chief, that, or Joy, you can tell me, that's just a temporary
Yes, 1 day.
1 day. Okay, license. And then approval of claims in the amount of $272,080.88.
And then, I don't know if this is where we want to talk about this, but in a previous public safety meeting, we were going to give a report on all the liquor licenses that were being approved going forward. Julie was going to give us a report of if they'd served any minors, that sort of thing,
Okay.
going forward before we approved it.
So
We have no violations for any of these businesses?
no violations for any of these that I mentioned. Well, Burning Oak is a new business, and the RAGBRAI is obviously one time, so Best Western and Elks. But that has been reviewed?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Jessica. So I'd entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Move to approve.
Moved by Hamilton,
Second.
second by Rasmussen. Please call the roll.
Hamilton?
Yes.
Rasmussen?
Yes.
Ledger Kalin?
Yes.
Hallie?
Yes.
Boyer?
Yes, but abstain on the minutes
Revelinsky?
of the 24th, I should say. I don't know, can I do that?
27th or 24th?
The first set of minutes.
Okay.
Yeah, 24th, because I wasn't here.
And you called my name too, and I yes, except I abstained in the minutes on the 27th, which I didn't attend.
Okay, thank you. The motion passes. We'll move on to our only appearance this evening. That is Darren Hamilton representing the Kiwanis Club of Fairfield. Darren?
Yes. With the RAGBRAI coming really soon, the next big event is Kids Day.
Kids Day. What's our date this year, Darren?
It will be the third Saturday in September, which is the 21st.
And the planning.
The theme this year is Kids' Dreams. And we're planning on having the same parade route that we normally have from the high school across the north side of the square on Broadway, then north on Main up to the south side of Howard Park, across Howard Park, south on Court, down to Briggs, and then back to the high school. And again, we'll be looking to construct the tent on the east side of the square on Thursday, and we would like to have use of the square beginning Thursday through Saturday, and we will finish up at approximately 1 in the afternoon with selling pancakes and tear down of the tent, and we should be cleaned up by 4.
Okay.
And I'll have a copy of the parade route map as usual to come to Joy here at City Hall, and then I will work with Daryl to get some barricades, but I will also do what we've done in the past and ask the Sheriff's Department to have use of their orange cones, so we have them out as well. And we have a lot of the same type of activities that we normally have, but we're looking forward to it again this year, starting at 6 a.m. with pancakes and going until 1.
All right, excellent. Thanks, Darren. So I'd entertain a motion then to approve on behalf of the Kiwanis Club of Fairfield the use of the square for the traditional Kids Day parade and activities September 21st.
This is to approve and
Moved by
wish you
Revelinsky.
good weather.
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you.
Second.
Second by Boyer. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, the same sign.
I abstain.
Abstain. Okay. Okay. Council, next we'll move to our resolutions action items. First action item will be the awarding of sanitary sewer replacement for Jefferson, Jefferson from 3rd to 2nd with Main, 2nd Street and Main project. So Melanie, looks like you're going to give us some background on this project.
All right, we tabled this at the last meeting because of for the main reason because of the difference between the low bid and the second low bid, as well as the difference with the engineer's estimate. We just wanted to have everyone a chance to look over the numbers and make sure everyone was bidding on the same project. That was cleared up. One of the differences is the city is going to be paying for the rock on this project, and the second low bid did not read that portion of the specs, so that is why their bid is higher. This was sent, again, using the department's new system via email to 8 contractors. We received 4 bids for the work. The low bid was for Bob Brown Excavating for $71,700. Second was Drish Construction of Fairfield for $96,892.50. Third was Cross Iron of Fairfield for $102,346. And the last bidder was Kinney & Sons of Mount Pleasant for $141,275.
Okay,
So,
and then your engineer's estimate, Melanie?
$124,000.
So obviously, the low bid came in considerably under the engineer's estimate. And is that the bid that you're recommending?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. So the recommendation then from Melanie and French Reniker is Bob Brown Excavating at $71,700.
Move to approve.
Moved by Hamilton to approve and award the bid.
I'll second.
Second by Ledger Kalin. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, the same sign. Great. Thank you, Melanie.
And the one other thing I wanted to mention is after talking with Kevin and the committee is traditionally we had open bids on Thursday and then we would award them the following Monday, and we'll work towards having more time in there so that the committee has more of a chance to review the bids before the council meeting to kind of keep from tabling issues. So we'll work on that for the next letting.
All right. Thank you very much. Next, council, we would just like to set a public hearing for Monday, July 22nd, which would be our next meeting. And that would be to approve the drawing specifications and contract for 2013 street resurfacing project. So just simply need a motion to set a public hearing.
So moved.
Moved by Boyer,
Second.
second by Rasmussen. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Thank you. Next, council, we have a resolution electing to exercise jurisdiction over the subdivision plat approval outside of the city limits. This is the very small subdivision we discussed last night just off of 185th Street, last meeting I meant to say. And that's literally just 2 lots, I think, that are being subdivided. Okay. So the resolution then is essentially electing to exercise our extraterritorial jurisdiction over this subdivision so that in the future, should it be something that is developed in a way that we would be concerned about, we would have some oversight of that. Any questions regarding that? Not entertain a motion to approve the resolution. Moved by Revelinsky to approve the resolution.
Second.
Second by Boyer. Any other discussion? Not, please call the roll.
Revelinsky.
Yes.
Boyer.
Yes.
Rasmussen.
Yes.
Howley.
Yes.
Hamilton.
Yes.
Ledger Kalin.
Yes.
Great, thank you. Next, Kevin, I'm going to ask you to give council some background on what it is that we're approving regarding the SRF water capital loan notes.
Yes, Your Honor. Basically, the SRF notes, the percentage of our interest has been lowered by the folks at the state, and so we do appreciate that. That'll make about a $275,000 difference in what we have to pay over the amortization of the loan. So it's a fairly good deal for everybody. Goes right along hand in hand with what the folks at the SRF are doing as well with stormwater best management practices, allowing us to use our future interest payments on projects we do going forward to do best management practices in stormwater rather than just simply paying those in interest. So people at the state getting a little more innovative and reaching out to local governments to help in the way they can. So it will lower our percentage, I think, to 1.75%. And so that's appreciable, $275,000 over the next, I guess, 18-year period that we're paying on this note, I believe.
So this is a refinance essentially.
It is. It's
Okay.
a state-financed refinance for everyone involved in that program. So
And
We
as we
appreciate that.
discussed, it's not as large an amount as what it sounds like. It's only a small amount each year over the next life of the loan. We kind of calculated that out to be, what, 18,000 or so a year is all.
Yeah.
So it's, in one way, it sounds very significant. In another way, it's just a slight relief on the loan payments that we are obligated to pay.
SRF has found itself in a highly vested situation because of people basically using the revolving loan programs because it is so excellent. So this is where they've gotten and what they've got going on. They've got enough people involved, enough money flowing to be able to do that. So.
Very good. So I'd entertain a motion to approve the resolution for essentially the refinancing of $5,900,000 in water revenue capital loan notes.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Boyer, second by Hallie. Any other discussion? If not, please call the roll.
Boyer,
Yes.
Hallie,
Yes.
Ledger Kalin,
Yes.
Hamilton,
Yes.
Revelinsky,
Yes.
Rasmussen,
Yes.
Great, thank you very much. Next, council, we have an ordinance that's essentially allowing us to utilize some other traffic signs temporarily during our RAGBRAI activities. And is this coming through Public Safety Committee, or Chief, do you have comments on it for us?
We had a meeting a week ago, and the only way to get a stop sign put in primarily at Main and Fillmore, because it's a state highway, is to pass a special resolution. Can't say that word. And then
Or ordinance.
Ordinance. Special ordinance.
Yeah.
To do that, and then what we did was included all the other stop signs,
Yeah.
so everybody else would be aware of where they're going to be,
Okay.
and that way it allows us to enforce them.
Okay. All right. Again, RAGBRAI just 3 weeks away. This being ordinance, probably recommend that we suspend the rules.
So moved.
Moved by Revelinsky to suspend the rules.
Second.
Second by Boyer. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Entertain a motion then to approve the ordinance for the temporary traffic signage from the first to the third and final reading.
So moved.
Moved by Hallie.
Second.
Second by Rasmussen. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Thank you. Next, council, we have coming back to us this evening the issue of the rezoning of 809 West Taylor from R2 to R3, the Maplewood Apartments LLC. This will be coming back newly as a first reading. As you recall, we went through this process and there were some concerns by the neighboring residents. I know that there have been some private meetings. This also went back to Planning and Zoning. Planning and Zoning did bring it, send it back here with a recommendation to approve as they had done last time, but we are still going to go through 3 public hearings and readings of this ordinance. So at this time, I would declare the public hearing open. And let's see, if there's anyone that would like to report on Planning and Zoning's deliberations. I know we did get their minutes, but Kevin, would you mind talking about that a bit?
Yes, Your Honor. We did meet and we had a good crowd. I think we had a good long discussion about the matter, and many of the topics that we hit on in former meetings about the subject we talked about at length. Not a lot of new information as far as what the project is or what the project might entail, but I think we did hit a lot of angles as far as the discussion goes with the citizenry. And I mean, I don't know, I guess we're going to hear from the citizens as how they came out of that feeling, but in the end, after a good long debate, I don't know if it was not about an hour, that the board did forward it again for the same basic reasons that they did prior, that it makes good planning sense, and they couldn't see either a higher or a best use, at least that was available in the near or even maybe long term, that would be suitable. So that's where we ended up.
Thank you. I'd like to ask John Kuster. John, has anything changed in terms of your design plans? I know at one point you were talking about scaling the project, the number of apartments down. Has that been part of this new proposal? Please, yeah.
We really haven't moved any further with our planning, waiting for this process to unfold. And so, if
So right now you're planning how many units?
the last meeting we had with an architect, which was a couple of months ago, his guess was the maximum would be 19.
Okay. Thanks, John.
Yep.
Anything else that that came up during the process? All right, thank you. Then I would open it up to anyone who would like to comment.
Council, Mayor,
Paul, how are you?
I'm doing well.
Good.
You know, I guess our concerns are basically the same thing we kind of always talk about. The increase of traffic flow, which, you know, I think Darren did say it would increase in our neighborhood. Higher density to an already high density neighborhood where basically single family dwellings. We have concerns of by rezoning to R3, you know, what if the existing building cannot be remodeled, you know? What happens if they condemn it and it's a rezoned R3? What does that propose for what they would do?
Can we answer, because that may be more on us than anyone else. Kevin, if that were the case, if this project were not to go forward, there were no other reason to grant that zoning, we go through a process of changing it back to R2.
If we went through a process to change it back to R2, it would have to be a process requested by the president at that time, property owner.
Okay.
Yeah, not in many cases you're going to see a city go in and force, you know, not forcibly, but basically of its own accord and its own initiative do a down zoning, unless it's a down zoning of the entire city accompanying maybe a new zoning code type process.
Okay.
Well, could it be?
I think we could still get to it.
Yeah, I mean, could it be
We could
on
probably still
passing?
Yeah,
If
it could be accomplished.
You know, if it doesn't pass, it would
Yeah.
be kicked back to R2.
Yeah.
I have a concern about the rent, of relative use, how that affects my value of my house. If it's down on the lower scale, it isn't what the proposed value of the whole building is. It's what the rent is, and that can affect how my house value is applied. Concerns about there's parcels to the west of it. What if this goes R3 in the future? The R4, you know, could it be rezoned R3? That is it a domino effect? There's R4 off of West Jackson, which is not that far from where we live. Put a R3 right there, and then there are parcels. I don't know if they can be developed, but it could open the door for future of more apartment complexes. Worry about the integrity of our neighborhood. We bought our house in '99, and it's just such a quiet neighborhood. There's horses in the fields. It's just a really nice, you know, neighborhood. It's two dead-end streets, very nice. And I kind of like if John would invite all you council, because the vote is really in your hands. Our future is in your hands of what's going to happen here. It goes R3, it's all going to land there. So I think all you guys should walk through that building and walk around the outside. You know, we've done it. You know, you guys vote. You know, this really is on, you know, you guys walk through, see what you think, and look around the outside on where the playgrounds were going. I know Michael did, Kevin did. You know, I think you all should. If you're voting, you should do it too. That's all I have to say.
Okay. Thanks, Mark. Any other council members I know Darren has, obviously, he's been there. Connie has been there.
I've been there.
Okay, Jessica's been there, so most of the council.
I've been by, but I haven't been inside, but I am happy to do that in time for the second reading of the ordinance. passes tonight.
Yeah,
Thank
and
you.
I have not been inside, but have been on the outside of it, so.
Anyone else like to address the council?
Hi, I'm Becky Myers. I'm Paul's wife. I live at 1107 South 8th. And actually, my thing, which I'm going to read, because
Sure, go ahead.
does have a point on the zoning that you guys were just discussing. I was unable to attend the tour of the building that John Kuster made available to the neighborhood because of medically diagnosed mold allergies, so I know firsthand of the damaging effect that mold can have to health and property. I saw a photo my husband took during the tour of some pretty unpleasant looking mold. We have been told by almost every city official, from members of this council, the city administrator, to members of the Planning and Zoning Commission, that although they sympathize with our neighborhood's concerns, the main reason they feel rezoning is a necessity in this instance. The problem is there is an existing building sitting and deteriorating, and that something must be done with it. When asked why other areas in town have succeeded in having rezoning denied, we were told that if this were a new project with new construction going on, things may turn out differently, and we should feel lucky that reputable and local developers purchased the property. Although many of us in the neighborhood, including myself, will continue to pursue our objections, I asked whether, despite the neighborhood's objections and valid concerns, the city still feels compelled to approve the zoning change, that a conditional approval be attached to the zoning that makes it subject to the eventual actual renovation of the existing building. If circumstances occur, if the building had to be condemned, or they changed their minds about the project or decided it should be a different scope, the zoning would revert back to R2, and any new development planned by either the current owners or any subsequent owners would need to go back through the planning and approval stages. Many of us have concerns that if rezoning is approved and something changes, it will be too late to be able to change the R3 zoning, leaving the neighborhood and the city at the mercy of whatever the property owners choose to do within R3 zoning guidelines, possibly subjecting our neighborhood to different sets of circumstances and concerns we would be unable to address. As John Kuster has repeatedly expressed in meeting after meeting, that the development group's only desire is to renovate the existing building into apartments. There are no plans to do any development of the adjoining purchased empty lots, and that he and his investors have no desire to go to the expense of tearing down and rebuilding something new onto the property. I would think that rezoning conditions would be an agreeable compromise by both the developers and the city.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I'll just mention that one of the ways that we can control that without putting a condition on the rezoning is that once a building permit is issued, there is an allotted amount of time to fulfill that. So that is one way that we can be assured that the construction is going to take place in a timely manner. But council, any thoughts on if this were approved and the project didn't go forward? Would you have any problem pursuing a path to rezone it again?
I think it's a reasonable request.
Yeah.
I'm not exactly sure how we word this ordinance, but could we put that in there, Kevin? Like,
Well,
John, Marcy?
John here?
I
Thinking on it, your condition.
I've never it's
John, if you come up.
It's common to do something like this in a BOA meeting when you're talking about a board of adjustments providing an adjustment, but it's not
Right.
common to do it in a
Right.
zoning
You
instance.
can't prejudge for the Board of Adjustment, that's the first thing.
Right.
Secondly, planning and zoning's purpose is different than the Board of Adjustment. Thirdly, your conditions sound like something that you really, the enforcement mechanism the city has is in other ordinances. If they have the proper zoning for the use, but then they don't do that, actually our city code enforcement officer would go visit them with a nuisance abatement request, and that would be the mechanism that would be most effective and most quick. You'd come back and have meetings and hearings with planning and zoning and possibly a Board of Adjustment hearing that would take you several months. The citation from the city code enforcement officer would be in front of a magistrate within the month.
But John, the
So-
request was not the worry that the place be taken down, but the request, the concern is that after it's taken down with R3 zoning now, something would be built that the neighborhood
Right.
would rather not have.
Well, you'd have, under the way our zoning permit mechanism presently works, which will probably change as you update your zoning ordinance, but you would have
if you were going to put anything new on that site, you'd have the requirement of the building permit, zoning permit that we call it right now. So you'd be looking at something new that they'd have to have before they broke ground for anything different, if that was going to happen.
Well,
If nothing was going to
I
happen.
don't think that's our concern. Our concern
Yeah.
is that if the project were not going to go through, could the council simply put a request into the Planning and Zoning Commission to return this, to then rezone this, to just go
Probably
through
not. The primary
driver.
driver for using that is the owner of the property. And if the owner has it zoned correctly, but has something that is running afoul of our ordinances, including our zoning ordinance, then we enforce it to either compel the owner to do what the ordinance intends for the use in that zone.
Or the stop work order mechanism.
Yeah.
And a couple points too. Just a couple. I think one thing is that what you're discussing, the proposition you're discussing, is something you'd more see in a development contract with the developer. Like the city and the developer have a contract, and that's a portion of that contract. But we don't. The city has no real aid or any. We don't have a contract toward any economic development thing here, or we don't have any reason to have a contract with the private entity. Now they could choose to do that, I guess, if it was some part of an agreement to develop. They could choose to do that with the city if it would make a difference in how the city would be a choice of a private developer making a contract as such to make it more possible for council to make a decision they would like to see. That's number one. Number two is John's right in what he's saying about the stopping mechanism. If you're doing the zoning, which we have a zoning code, granted it is quite loose. It's an interesting point that's been brought up by the citizens in regard to someone gets a permit, starts a project. Suddenly they're not doing that project. Very common amongst in the development world. Small changes may occur, or what you might call substantive changes that change the whole scope of what's being done. You see this when people get permits to do downtown efforts, and then suddenly they're not doing townhomes, they're doing something else. Happened in a city of mine formerly. So our future code will have more in it that makes that impossible. Any substantive change would require that a developer come back in with new plans showing the new thing, reapproval having to occur and all that. But John's point still does come to bear. We do have a zoning code. We do have certain rules. When you come to get that permit in good faith, you are saying, here's the thing that we're going to build. We're not doing the reviews on those. In a sense, I guess the point I'm making is we're permitting construction activity per se, but we're not really, and it's called a building permit, but we don't do the things, the building inspections, that administrative process, issuing certificates of occupancy, COs as we call them, in that process legally. So there's things we can do, but stopping substantive changes can be a difficult thing if you don't have the mechanism in place to do it. However, the first point being that the contract can be struck between the private entity and the city.
Yeah, of course it can.
Yeah, that would solve that problem.
I don't know how flexible the financing is on this as far as where you're talking about a group of conditions that flavor your timeline and other things, but you could certainly in your minutes, if you go ahead and approve a first reading, you can reflect in your minutes what you understood the representation of the builder was at the time you were going ahead with this, and the sentiments of the neighborhood wanting conditions. And you kind of lay the framework for later on, if you do have to back up and enforce it, having a good record on what the understanding was at the time you went through your readings. And if there's some of that's not satisfactory after somebody, maybe a council member, takes a walk and decides there's another question, you have 2 more readings after tonight too.
All right. Thank you, John. Yes, Jennifer.
Yes, Jennifer Diamond, 806 West Taylor, right across the street. Let's see, I have 3 things I want to address. The first is I was out of town for the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, so I just asked some neighbors what had transpired. And the good news is I heard it was a very reasonable, careful, detailed meeting back and forth. But I have a couple of questions about some technicalities about that meeting. First of all, was a certified letter supposed to be sent out for that meeting, for the Planning and Zoning Commission, to whatever the neighbors are supposed to be? That's my first question. I'll let you answer that.
Yes, we sent out a certified mail, I do believe.
Okay, I don't think so, actually.
But I don't think the law requires that the mail even be certified. It's a prior notice, but.
Okay,
You know.
all right. So I just wondered what the law required, because I don't think it was a certified letter. I did get a certified for this meeting, though.
Yeah,
Yeah. But I don't think it was for the planning and zoning.
The law, I don't think requires that the
Okay.
before notice for the planning and zoning be certified. It just requires notice.
Okay, great. Okay, my second question is, so there's I think 7 people on planning and zoning, and I think 4 people were there, and since I was out of town, I called Clyde Cleveland and left him a message and told him, what my, my points were that I'd like to be brought up at the meeting. And then it was a text message, and he texted me back, and he said that he was actually sick and wasn't going to be able to make it. And then he texted me back about 8 minutes later and said that, and this was the day of the meeting, actually, and he said that the meeting was called off because there was no quorum. So, how many, it could have been that somebody showed up late, but how many people is for planning and zoning?
4 would be a quorum.
Is 4 a quorum? And then I just noticed in the minutes that they're incorrect in one respect, and that is that as far as voting, the ayes, it has Maudlin, Horace, and Koppel, and Kennedy abstained. That's what everybody told me. So that's 3 voted for, 1 abstained. So is that
a quorum establishes the groundwork for a meeting to be able to take place?
And then the majority
However,
within that?
That's right.
Okay.
However, if someone abstains, then a simple majority of those that remain not abstaining would
Okay.
be
And sorry,
sufficient.
what did you say a quorum? It's 4 out of the 7?
4 out of 7.
It's a majority.
It's a 7-member
Simple
board.
majority. Okay, great. Okay, those are my questions on that.
I want to say, I'm sitting here thinking, I think we've sent out 2 certified mails to this, in this issue, I believe. Now, the first one didn't go to a couple people.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, then my second thing I want to bring up is about, I keep hearing from a lot of people who've gone through, even not part of the familiar faces that you've seen here, that that there truly is mold in the building. And I just wonder, is there some kind of city or state inspection that's supposed to happen in a building that has mold? Because, I mean, I do know actually from having renovated before that that's a really big issue in every state.
Asbestos required, if you find evidence that you know of asbestos or a strong belief that you have, it would require having inspection to confirm it. I'm not knowledgeable of any inspection for mold in the state of Iowa, but certainly there is mold present in the building right now. There's been some leaky sections of the roof. I myself saw evidence of it.
So is there a way to find out if there is a state regulation about
If there were
mold?
one, I'm pretty sure I would know it at this point because, of course, I've had to go through a bunch of different kind of phase 1 site assessments and things like that for commercial projects. And that the city was involved in as well. I've never heard of one at all. And I certainly would have had to have had one done. John, do you know anybody? I've never. John Kuster or John Morrissey, either one of you would know. I would hope more than I would probably. Yeah.
Okay.
So I've never heard of it. If you find evidence of that, I'd like to see it. But EPA, I don't know of any EPA requirement or DNR requirement from the state here.
Okay, great. All right. Okay, then the third thing I want to address is this is what I've been hoping for all along, and to this point it hasn't happened. And so I thought, well, maybe it's just good if I just state it real simply. It seems that generally among the neighbors, the 2 concerns are the number of apartments, let's call it the density, and then secondly, who are the renters going to be? And what I've been hoping for all this time is that there's some sort of compromise could be reached with the development partners and the neighborhood. And I think the neighborhood would go for this if there was fewer apartments because then that would increase the square footage as it is right now. Just rough numbers, taking the square footage of the building and subtracting about 25% for hallways and common space. That leaves, if it's 19 apartments, as Mr. Kuster had said at one time, that means each apartment's about 729 square feet. And that's a pretty small apartment, and that's not, so my hope has been that, and it hasn't happened, and I've actually tried to have someone actually from our neighborhood called Mr. Kuster about 3 weeks ago, but the call, the return didn't happen. With fewer apartments, then you get a larger square footage, and that does two things. Secondly, it costs more, obviously, usually with a larger apartment, and you get a different level of renter in there. And secondly, it probably lowers the density of how many people are in that building, and therefore how much traffic there is in the neighborhood. And
we asked that question of Mr. Kuster before you arrived.
Okay.
And he said because this has been held up, he has not had any further meetings with his architect, so he doesn't really know at this point in time how many it's going to end up being. So.
Okay. Well,
and
I think that. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, that's right.
Let's see. Originally, I think that. Well, anyway, I think there is isn't there for R3 or something? It has to be no more than 19 apartments or something anyway. But anyway, all right, I've been trying to figure out, ways of making that match between what I think that the neighbors would feel more comfortable with, and therefore there'd be, the objection might.
We've all been seeking compromise.
Yeah.
I think that's why this has gone through 2 readings to the council, and then back to planning and zoning, and now back to the council.
Yeah.
And there's been a lot that's gone on, and there's been a lot of patience in this process as well. Are you saying right now that the neighbors would be willing to say, yes, build your project with X number of apartments as opposed to 19?
Yes, that's.
And you're speaking for the whole neighborhood?
No, I'm not speaking for the whole neighborhood, but having talked to a number of neighbors, there definitely has been that.
Okay.
Actually, this has been for more than a month. Yeah.
And Jennifer, I think everybody involved with the situation is well aware that the lower density is preferable from the neighbor side for sure. But Mr. Kuster can't answer it right now.
So, well, 2 things about that.
And he's not required to based on the zoning.
Yeah, I actually understand that the planning and zoning board members did ask him, this question and some similar, and Mr. Kuster said he didn't know. So, in that case, when will Mr. Kuster be able to answer that? And is he or will that answer ever come?
He's not. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
He is not actually required to answer that to us by any regulation or any part of the zoning is satisfied at the number that he put in before. The density of the zoning would be, I think it was 24 to the 23, the height of the units. But 15 years, 15, 17 actually, if you want to count when I was just a little pup around construction industry, I've never seen anything grow. It always shrinks. He'll be lucky to get 16 or 18. I'm sure he's hoping. So the density probably will get a little less high than it is now.
Okay. Well, in conclusion, I think that that's, where there would be a happy neighborhood and still with bigger apartments and more luxury. I think that, the income would be there.
That's the point I'm trying to make about how patient Mr. Kuster's been through this process, is that he's aware of this and hears that, and I think he hopes he's able to do that, so that the neighborhood is happy with that. But again, he's not required to answer that through this process.
Right.
So we can't really hold him to it. We hope that there's some compromise that comes in that, so that everybody does come out feeling much better about it.
Well, that's my hope too, and it's also been my dissatisfaction that there really hasn't been any movement from.
So if we don't require it, and he doesn't want to spend the money on the extensive architectural work until he knows he has the zoning for it. We're also at a little bit of an impasse there too. So I think everybody's working in good faith.
All right. Okay, thanks.
Thanks. Yes.
In Huxtable, I'm at 1104 South 8th Street, adjacent to the former Nelson Nursing Home building lot. So regarding this very question about the possibility of John Kuster and his group building larger units, I learned from Tim Kiken as attorney, who most of you probably know or are acquainted with, that, and I've spoken with Kevin Flanagan, I've spoken with Darren Hamilton about this to some extent, but it didn't go as far as I would feel satisfied, so it's still a big question for me. I understand that under R2 zoning, some level of multi-housing is allowed. So my question would be and in talking with Mr. Flanagan and Mr. Hamilton, it's also apparently in the code, it's based on square footage. I believe that means lot square footage, not building square footage, rather than units in for an apartment building. So I run up against, given the fact that so many neighbors I know have been in these houses that are single family, owner occupied, not rentals, and they have not been turned into duplexes through, 40, 50 years. Though the nursing home has been there since '75 itself. But it was built when that piece of land was in the county, not within the city. So I don't know when zoning changed and so on. Is it possible that you all would be willing to retain the R2 zoning and allow for a project that Mr. Kuster and his group are interested in that would then maybe offer the compromise that is being looked for on the part of the neighbors more so than
Based
anything.
on square footage. you're saying?
Yeah, and I don't know quite how to do the figures because in speaking to these two gentlemen, it was becoming quite vague as to what the code really allows and so on and so on. I do know it is conditional. I do get that it's under square footage, and I know you both are not into going in this direction, but I need to represent the neighborhood and our interest in maintaining this character of single-family home rather than stepping it up to including apartment buildings and all the issues that we've all repeatedly brought up that concern and actually frighten some of us. So,
I mean, in response, it's tough to make a response to that because I'm only interested in going in the direction that everybody else is interested in going in. But
that sounds fair.
However the vote goes is the interest of mine
Right.
only. But it's the interest of the project. I mean, the private industry person sets the interest.
Well, yeah,
I mean,
I
our
get
interest
that
is-
the whole project I get is driven by the personal owners,
The
private
developers,
the nature
and-
of this project wouldn't be allowable in R3.
Exactly. The density
so,
would be too
so
great.
here's
So you send
here's
a-
where I get probably a little too
Otherwise, you
out
wouldn't
of
be here.
bounds. As I start thinking, even if you use the existing slab, there's potential, and this gets to be a little crazy and probably not acceptable, but there could be potential for creating some kind of group of condos with a central or a combined kind of entry, some kind of atrium or something like that in the middle. Of course, you know, designers, architects, engineers would have to get really, really creative, but I think there's potential for it to make it, and even it could, now of course this is not going to go with the cash flow expected out of 19-unit, you know, continuous rental apartment. And of course I'm looking for the other extreme. I'm pretty polarized here. Make it into condos that are going to be also owner occupied rather than rentals.
It would be difficult to use that pad on this lot to do any kind of residential development unless the middle of it was just a courtyard and didn't include residences
Well,
or something. But
is that doable?
are you asking me as a developer or as a city,
No,
administrator?
I'm just
as a developer,
asking,
I would say no.
No, I'm asking more
It's
as a design and engineering consideration. I don't even want to ask the developer at the moment because I doubt that.
Theoretically, as a developer, you'd be putting in too much of an investment to actually make the project work for you, unless it was just not going to be a profit project, and it's not a city project. So, but the density would be too great, literally. Unless, you're just not going to see it happen because the investment.
Of course, I'm talking about reducing the
R2,
density.
would not be possible.
Yeah, I'm talking about. Oh, wait.
Using the footprint R2 would not be possible. The density would be too great.
Well, and I think, again, we have one project ahead of us that is the wish of the developer, and that's all we can really can consider at this point. It's a very creative thought that you have, but it's
conjecture.
Whether that's...
I'm driven to get more creative because
No, I
I'm driven
understand.
to protect the neighborhood.
Just to follow the Lynn's thinking here, if for some reason R3 were denied, how many units would be allowable in that property?
Thank you.
I
That
guess
becomes more of the question.
That was her point that she was making. And just for our information, do you know?
I can go get the code and we can analyze that. I haven't actually analyzed that.
Sure. Yeah.
We'd read the code and look at the square footage and then this. Oh, we got one. Mine's green.
Yeah. While Kevin's looking that up, is there anyone else that would like to address the public hearing at this time? Okay. Then council, any comments on some of the public statements that have been made thus far? I'm sorry. Yes, you can come up.
Hello, my name is Nancy Gaub, and I live at 908 South 8th Street. And our points that the neighborhood feels, I think, have been very well expressed by other people, and the legalities I'm not very big on, but I just wanted to add my voice that we would feel that the character of the neighborhood is really in danger, and a lot of people are already considering leaving the neighborhood because of this possibility, and it's very inconducive, I think, to a feeling of community. And that's one thing that my husband and I have come to Fairfield for. We teach at Grinnell College, and we live here simply because of the quality of life. And that neighborhood really drew us because the proximity to Jefferson County Park and a feeling of almost being in a rural setting and being able to walk in a very quiet area all of the time, and the people. And this would definitely change it. I am very concerned about that if you change the code to R3 or whatever you call that, that opens up for not just these developers, but if they decide that they can't make it work, that they might sell the building, and then the code would be there for someone else who might be less willing to work with the community. It's a little bit of the question of who does the neighborhood belong to, and I know they have bought the building and they own a lot of land there right now, but we really feel like the community belongs to us, and that if we really don't want something like 14 apartments with all the added traffic and noise and possible police action that sometimes comes with these sort of places in our neighborhood, that shouldn't we be listened to even if we don't have a legal reason that that some other people have brought up, some technicality that we can catch you on. But I'd just like to appeal to you for the emotional level of the neighborhood and how really the vast majority of us feel. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much for your comments. And they are very much appreciated because we're not beyond the concern of the neighbors from an aesthetic point of view or from a quality of life point of view. This hasn't come to any vote yet. We're hearing both sides and weighing the merits of both. So we will get to that soon. Kevin, do you have?
Yes, I have some code for your reading pleasure. Permitted uses in the R2 district. I'm just going to kind of run through this short section on both codes just so you have a good overall idea. We'll chat about either one because it gets kind of... Permitted uses in the R2 district shall be uses permitted in R1, of course, two-family attached residences and homeschooling cooperative. Permitted accessory uses in R2 are the uses that are permitted within R1, as well as uses authorized by the Board of Adjustments. It goes through those uses, including multifamily residences, lodging homes. But under lot area, it says lot area requirements in the R2 shall be for single-family dwelling units 7,500 square feet. So if you're in an R2 and you want a single family, you must have a 7,500 square feet. For two-family attached dwelling, 8,500 square feet would be the lot requirement. For each family in excess of 2, in addition to the requirement in subsection 2, which is the two-family 8,500 square feet requirement. In addition to that, above 2, add 3,750 square feet per family for a single-story structure, and for each family in excess of 2, in addition to the requirements in subsection 2, which of course again is the 8,500 feet, add 1,200 square feet per family for a multi-story. This is a single-story, so you'd be adding 3,750 square feet per family for a single-story over 2 families. That's in an R2.
Now we need to calculate it.
Exactly. So you're getting into having to have a lot that's an extremely large lot.
Okay, do you want to
have an idea how big the
wanna-
lot is?
It's about density, right? So you're having to have huge lots to make it work in an R2 density to get more than 2 families. So R2 is really traditionally, all that's saying is all we want here is R2s. You know, attached or detached, one or the other. All we want is R2.
But
Now,
I mean, for this property specifically, does anybody know how many square feet the lot is?
so it's,
72,000.
I was going to say it's not 100,000, so we're kind of on R2.
So it's not even.
What's needed to meet that code is 72,000.
Yeah.
72,000.
And this one, the lot itself is not over. I don't think it's 100,000 square feet, but
So you might be able to have 3.
and in R3, I'll go
units.
through that just so we know the differences. But in R3, of course, you can permit anything in R1 and R2 and multifamily residences and apartments. Lot area requirements are for single family 7,500 square feet. For two family 8,500. Consistency there. For each family in excess of 2, in addition to subsection 2, which is the 8,500. Of this section, add 3,750 square feet per family for a single story.
What's it say?
Yeah, well, I'm only reading it, guys. Don't blame me. I didn't write it, John. No, I'm kidding. For each family in excess of 2, in addition to the requirement in subsection 2 of this section, add 1,200 square feet per family for a multi-story structure. For attorney law offices, banks, chiropractic, and dental, and we know how special they all are, that group. 8,700 12 square feet. Kind of strange number, but so you can see the numbers.
What do they say?
Well, in R2, they're probably close, yeah. And
But it says apartment, I mean, is it just apartments? Is that the only language differentiator?
Single-family dwelling.
Single-family dwelling, or family dwelling,
Right.
quote, yeah.
But in terms of what's allowable in R3.
Yeah, over
That's
2.
because that is not allowable in R2.
Yeah. Add 3,750 square feet. And for each family assisted, add 3,750. Oh, that's right, that is the thing. The next one would be
Do you know the dimensions of the lot, John?
1,200 square feet.
Isn't that?
It might qualify under R2 for this.
That's my question.
Multi-story structure.
That's my question. So why do we, I don't know, I'm sorry, I get a little feisty. Why don't we know the dimensions of the lot?
Doesn't change the fact that if he's allowed to build it in R2, that he's going to build it.
Well, I mean, that's a big point.
Yeah.
True. And it
And
doesn't
what you're trying to
exclude the
do is
potential for the
Now, the apartments
subsidized
are-
low-income situation still, because we do have some duplexes that are subsidized on West Tyler that do provide quite a bit of distress for many of the neighbors, and that is within R2 zone. So part of my point becomes, I remember Kevin Flanagan saying at one of our meetings, this is a relatively densely populated neighborhood, albeit single-family home neighborhood. They are relatively small lots. But we don't want the density to be increasing. I know
It's not, though.
I know you get into your specifics about a 19-unit apartment might not.
Yeah, my
increase
point to
the
that statement,
density.
though, was that it did increase your density,
Yeah,
by matter of
I-
fact, because of the square footage of the lot.
Yeah.
Okay, we've got
But
a couple conversations going on here.
It's
Let's,
15,681 square feet, according to the assessor's page. It's 15,681.6 square feet of land, according to the assessor's page.
According to the assessor's page, it's
Oh, you already found it?
15,000.
15,681.6.
That would be
That's the land.
That's the building
The land
lot,
itself?
not the parking lot included?
It's a land basis.
Because there has been some
Sounds-
confusion about the
Okay.
parking lot.
I just, I
So about 4 or 5
actually
units.
want to wrap this up. I mean, only because I'm not sure that you're making the case for, if it is allowable in R2, which it's not because of the density in the apartments, you're making the case for it to be developed, and I don't think that's helping you. And again, we're dealing with just the situation that's before us. So what I'd like to do is to just,
And the petition is for changing the zoning.
Correct.
From R2 to R3,
correct.
based on
But it's not.
trust and faith about
I don't,
what the
yeah,
project
it's not an,
will.
this is not an allowable use in R2.
Okay.
Yeah.
I needed to inquire about this,
Yeah.
so thank you.
And again, it's a creative suggestion, and if that's what the wishes of the developer, that would be one thing. But it's not what we're considering now. That could change. I would love to get council's comments on our discussion. So unless there are any other public comments, we'll close the public hearing portion of this discussion and then ask the council to weigh in. Any other points? Okay, so we'll close the public hearing. Council, any discussion, or if you'd like to make a motion one way or the other on the proposed rezoning?
Can I make one statement before you do, Your Honor? That is that I just want to clear up. This seems to poke something out in the zone. When we change our zoning code, it would have changed to an R3 anyway if it were an R2 on the density level, because the density level won't be based on having to have this or that size of lot. It's going to be based on the density of the people living in the certain area. So I don't think it makes a difference. I mean, I was just thinking about that whole. Not only, it won't make a difference in the near future either way. It would still be an R3. All apartment complexes would have to be, at least, not an R4. Sorry.
Okay, thanks. So council, discussion.
Well, Mayor,
Go ahead, John.
what I was going to say is, this is a real hard one for me to vote on, because what I try to do in these situations, put myself in the as one of the adjoining property owners there in the neighborhood, and I've seen the neighborhood. I mean, my first thought was, well, if I had bought it would be a very strong argument of the neighbors if it was going from a vacant lot or a field to this development. But since there has been a somewhat, non-traditional use for that property, it's not, because we keep saying, well, this is just a neighborhood of single-family homes and very quiet and all that. But there was, since 1975, there was this other thing that was there, the nursing home. And so that's an issue, one issue that I consider. But, I really sympathize with the neighbors, because it is going to change the character of the neighborhood. These just kind of I'll just say, all the things that come to my mind. On one hand, I like the fact that there's going to be probably young families living very close to Penn School. I think, I think that's a positive. I come back to the thing that Jim Horace said, or was reported that he said in the planning and zoning meeting, was, what's the alternative? And I understand, if I lived there, my hope would be someone take it down and put in some daisies, and that would be my best alternative if I was a neighbor. As a member of the city council, I can't see that necessarily as the best thing for the city. I mean, there's, as I said, this is area close to the school. It is a beautiful neighborhood. It is a desirable place to live. So it's hard for me to vote no on it, because I feel like Jim Horace is like, what's the alternative? Just let the thing keep rotting until someone takes it over. as far as the objection to the R3 and trying to rescind it, right? I was open to that. It doesn't seem to be an easy thing to do, to rescind it. But then when I think about it, probably as far as R3 use goes, this is probably the worst case for the neighborhood. I mean, if they take down the building, I think whatever else would come in is probably going to be less, concerning than what the present proposal is. So I'm not sure that's that big an issue in my mind. So I guess at this point, I haven't talked myself out of voting yes, and I really have considered it, but I haven't talked myself out of it. So I just wanted to share my thinking.
Purely on a parking level, you're right about that. There's not room to park any more cars there than there is parking now.
Well, I think these are always difficult decisions to make, and yet, I think I understand totally the concern from the neighborhood, and certainly after being in Fairfield for a number of years, I'm very familiar with the neighborhood and many of the neighbors who live in the area. And I guess the only thing I keep sort of like John, sort of looking down the road and thinking, I'm optimistic that this would be a positive rather than a negative, in the sense that I think it would be nice to see something happen to that facility, which at the present time is certainly not a desirable addition to the neighborhood. I mean, it can't be, because, it's definitely a derelict situation. And I think that, I guess I would like to say that I have enough confidence in this development that it would not be damaging as you perhaps are concerned about. And I mean, I think that the density, there was a facility there, a nursing home, which, let's face it, there were people coming and going on shifts. There were visitors coming and going. It wasn't as if the street was never used before. And I think if the, situation works itself out, I think it could be a real asset to the neighborhood. And so I guess I can't help but say, I guess I'm Pollyanna in that I want to look down the road and say this is for the best. I think hopefully for the best for all of you.
I've spoken with all of you, and I've been at a meeting with you, and I've kind of beat myself up over this several different times, because as we were all just confused over what the zoning ordinances currently are, and the densities and lot sizes that pertain to what's going on in an area. One thing that I've always come back to is, again, what is the alternative for that? If the building sits there and deteriorates and does nothing, as it has done for the last few years, it can bring more problems and headaches to you as neighbors. And that's not a true justification for voting yes or no, but the faith that I have with the people that are investors in this property, and with the intentions that they have for this property, I think are beneficial for the city as well as for the neighborhood, from the standpoint that they follow through with what they have stated they would do in previous cases. And while that's not a true assertion of what may happen in the future, it's the best assertion that we have at this point in time in front of us. And again, it's very hard for me, because that is my neighborhood too. I don't live right there with you, but I am within a very reasonable distance of what's taking place in that area. And something like that could very well happen to me. There's a large area of ground that's outside the county that adjoins my property, as well as ground that's inside the city right there. And who's to say that something won't develop in those areas different than what our single family residence is right now? And that's where my pull and tug comes from. But when it comes down to it, I have to maintain the position that I took at the zoning meeting, and I tried to express my thoughts as best I could at that meeting, and I'm going to have to support this. So that's where I stand. I'm sorry, Lynn, but that really is where I'm at. So.
Entertain a motion. This is our first reading. There will be 2 more readings.
I would move that we pass this from the first to the second reading.
I would second.
Moved by Hamilton, second by Rasmussen. Again, that is to pass from the first to the second reading, the rezoning 809 West Taylor from R2 to R3. Any other questions or discussion? If not, please call the roll.
Hamilton,
Yes.
Rasmussen,
Yes.
Ledger Galen,
Yes.
Revelinsky,
Yes.
Hallie,
Yes.
Boyer,
I will abstain. I have business associates on each side and a personal friend on the development side.
Was that everyone? Okay, so motion passes 5 and 1 abstention, and we will take this up as a public hearing, and then any other council members that would like to do any further research in the neighborhood as was requested by the neighbors, please do so before our next meeting. Thank you all for your public comments today. I know how difficult this is, and it's going through hopefully as open and reasonable a process as we can make it through this governing process. I hope you all understand that, and we do appreciate all the energy that you're putting into this as well. Okay, next, council, in my report, I just have 1 request for a board reappointment, and that is to the Historic Museum Board for Mark Schaefer. So entertain a motion to approve Mark Schaefer.
Move to approve.
Moved by Hamilton.
Second.
Second by Rasmussen. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Thank you. I don't see any committee reports. Kevin, do you have anything additional to report?
I do not, Your Honor. Do any department heads or economic development have anything that they would like to report?
Okay. If not, entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved by Revelinsky, second by Hamilton. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, the same sign. Meeting adjourned.